How can we design technology to incorporate health research and innovation? Welcome to What's Next Canada, the premier aging and brain health conference repurposed for you in a special podcast series. Listen in with our host Mel Barsky as he introduces the technology panel. The moderator is Dr. Roseanne Alliot, Director of Research, Translation, and Innovation at Baycrest. The panelists are Dr. Ryan Darcy, co-founder of Healthtech Connex, Zayna Khayat, a futurist at SC Health, and George MacGinnis, the Healthy Aging Challenge Director at UK Research and Innovation. Here we go. Now streaming, listen in to this technology panel at the intersection of health research and innovation.
I'm going to move into our next panel now with Dr. Roseanne Along from our Rotman Research Institute, who is going to lead this panel to be the moderator. Dr. Roseanne Along is the Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at Baycrest, the Rotman Research Institute. She received her master's degree and PhD in neurological sciences with her research focusing on inflammatory models of neurodegenerative disease and body image and visual perception among young adults. In her current role at Baycrest, Roseanne manages a research support and services hub, supporting clinicians, healthcare professionals, and industry in conducting applied and evaluative research. She co-leads the Baycrest Research Training Center in developing and implementing skill and career development opportunities for research trainees. She also implements institution-wide strategic initiatives, including institution-wide funding opportunities, research commercialization projects, as well as national and international stakeholder relations. Roseanne also works very closely with CABHI as our lead scientific officer. Roseanne, can I turn it over to you?
So Mel, thanks so much for organizing, to you and the whole CABHI team. It's my pleasure to moderate our next panel section, the intersection of health research and innovation. I'm going to actually ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves in a quick 60 seconds about who they are and how they're connected to research and innovation. Zayna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Zayna Khayat. I lead the Futures team at St. Elizabeth Healthcare. We're Canada's largest social enterprise in healthcare, and we largely deliver care to people in their homes, particularly aging adults. And my team is designing, testing, and scaling new models and new business models to do that, that are more future focused. So I guess the reason we're very connected to research, and we have a dedicated research institute at St. Elizabeth Healthcare, is there's no way we can do what we do without evaluating the impact on multiple variables. And so we work side by side with research, but our methods are very different. And so it's sometimes oil and water, and sometimes it's a great vinaigrette. And so we'll get into how shortly.
Thanks, Zayna. George MacGinnis from lovely UK, perhaps you can introduce yourself, please.
Hello, yes, I'm George MacGinnis. I'm the Challenge Director for the UK's Healthy Aging Challenge. And I work for an organisation called UK Research and Innovation, which is the main government funding body. And firstly, I'll join the growing chorus to say, Mel and the team, what a great job CABHI have done in keeping this dialogue going through the virtual conference. I'd love to have been there in person and look forward to being able to get back to Canada before too long. So back to the sort of challenge. A couple of years ago, the UK government set out 4 grand challenges to guide future investments and at the time an industrial strategy. One of those is Aging Society, for which it set out a really ambitious mission for people to enjoy 5 more years of healthy, independent living by 2035, whilst narrowing the gap between the experience of the richest and the poorest. So the Healthy Aging Challenge isn't all of that, but it does support that by enabling businesses, including social enterprises, to develop and deliver services and products which will support people as they age, and the innovative business models that will now enable those innovations to be adopted at scale. So our scope is actually broad. and is really sort of focused on the prevention agenda. And it includes topics that have come up earlier today, including living well with cognitive impairment, maintaining social connections, as well as age-friendly homes and communities. So looking forward to starting the dialogue.
Thanks, George. And last but surely not least, Ryan Darcy from BC. Why don't we hear about who you are and how you're connected to the area?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to join today. Ryan Darcy, I'm from Vancouver. I am a neuroscientist that became also an entrepreneur. So I've co-founded Healthtech Connex along with Health and Technology District, which is our innovation ecosystem out here in Vancouver. I also have the role as a professor both at Simon Fraser University and UBC, and live both the life of an entrepreneur and then the confused life of trying to do that while being an academic.
Okay, thank you guys so much. So for the benefit of our audience, we decided to do something hopefully a little provocative and a bit fun. We are challenging ourselves, or actually our panelists are challenging themselves, to offer 15 big ideas in 15 minutes on how we can accelerate research and the connection between integrating research and innovation, in Zayna's sage words, research to innovation impact. So we're going to start off with Zayna for her 5 big ideas in 5 minutes. So Zayna, the floor is yours.
Okay, so 5 minutes, 5 ideas. I have my timer on.
Big ideas.
Yeah, 5 big ideas. So the first one is around, I call it participatory research. And I think Carol posted my 5 ideas so you could track along. So much like healthcare, is moving up the ladder of engagement of people and their families from subjects of research or care to, leading the design, the same is happening to research. So, at the peak of it, we're now starting to see patients and or their families not only set the research agenda in terms of how funds should be spent, but designing their own clinical trials and sometimes almost leading them. And then, research infrastructure traditional is supporting that. So when I was living in the Netherlands, we designed a framework and a platform called REACH. I forget what it stands for, but we can put the link, where we literally let patients using the app infrastructure build their own clinical study with what metrics they wanted to measure. And I also take a lot of inspiration from this participatory research from the UK, where our colleague George is from, which I think is really through the British Medical Journal and the UK set the context for co-design of research with people and their families. So that's one. Number 2 is developmental evaluation. We've had this gold standard of, traditional kind of randomly controlled trial and traditional evaluation, where our researchers and evaluators are positioned as these objective outsiders that they know other people do the stuff, some researcher evaluates it and makes a report at the end, when you can't really act on maybe some design features that were wrong and wrong assumptions. So we're undertaking right now in my team a major redo of how home care is done in Canada. And we're using a developmental evaluation approach with our research center, which is a much more dynamic, real-time. We don't set the metrics at the outset. We develop them as the new model of care proceeds. Our researchers are part of designing the intervention and doing the changes to the intervention in real time. So I think that's going to be a game changer if we're going to actually solve messy problems in the world, and aging is a messy challenge. The third big idea whose time has come is what I call decentralized trials, or decentralized or virtual trials. So again, historically, all the action that went down in healthcare was in institutions, and therefore the majority of the clinical research infrastructure has been built based on a hospital model, that you have to have hospital sites and they have to have the REB and they do all the patient accruals. And we know that probably, 80% of trials fail purely because we can't recruit patients, let alone all the other attrition. There's a massive movement in this era of, digital everywhere and care anywhere, that the research infrastructure does not just need to sit in institutions. I would take a look at a company like Science 37 that's kind of creating that with incredible data that's taking efficiency out of clinical trials. All care will move to the home setting, therefore clinical trials should be in the home setting. Number 4 is a big one. Pay for performance research. Imagine as a researcher, if your grant or some proportion of it was contingent on achieving actual health outcomes or whatever impacts you're doing your research on, cost savings, and you either got paid more when you achieve those, like you share in the upsides, or there's a penalty if you don't. You got to give back the money or whatever. So Canada Institute for Health Research, I worked on them for a while on this, of testing. Can we have a portion of our funding be contingent on hitting the results? And this is health services research funding. And that pilot's now been published. You can have a look at it. There's a broader version of this that's already been happening. I call this venture philanthropy. So just like at Baycrest, the days are gone where some rich person's going to give you money for research because they want their name on your MRI machine. They want to see results, and it's linked to that. And then my final big idea, I call it nouveau engagement. And I think that, gone are the days of just publishing the findings and then the only people who read it is you and your mother and maybe your brother. And that's all of my academic papers. I'm a converted academic.
And my best friend.
And your best friend. But, really all these new channels for scientists to engage civil society and all their stakeholders on their findings, but these are legitimized, knowledge translation processes that are just as much weight, if not more, than the traditional channels. Then, I remember making my posters, cutting out paper and publishing, but social media, atomized articles, patient abstracts, pop-up shops, like all these new ways to engage and actually change mindsets, change behavior, and change care, I think are going to be the way of the future. Those are my 5.
5 minutes, 5 big ideas. Zayna, virtual clapping going on right there. All right, George MacGinnis, your 5 big ideas in 5 minutes.
Hi, fine. And I've just posted something to Ariel, so the group could see them. But my first one, national research registries and participant incentives. So this idea is about allowing people to pre-declare an interest in participating in clinical trials. And a really good example is 5 years ago, the UK established a service called Join Dementia Research, a national service which enables you to register your interest and be matched with suitable research studies. In that 5 years, it's attracted 46,000 volunteers and contributed to the recruitment of some 27,000 research participants on the way. And in the process, significantly improving the time and effort it takes to get trials underway. So that's the first part of that, but I'm going to sneak in another twist on this. So there's a network in Newcastle in the north of England called VOICE, stands for Valuing Our Intellectual Capital and Experience, and it's part of our National Innovation Centre for Aging. And they've established a network of older people who participate in market testing and offer this as a service. So my add-on thought is, why not extend that idea to offer residents in retirement communities and care homes incentives to participate as well, and extend that and reach out to groups that are otherwise hard to get to. So that's idea number 1. The second idea is about embedding researchers, placing researchers into innovative companies to connect businesses with cutting-edge science expertise. So the UK runs a program called Knowledge Transfer Partnerships, which does exactly that. And typically a sort of postdoc is assigned to a business for up to a year to help them with a particular project to bring that innovation into the market. So one great example that I've seen was a technology postdoc placed in a retirement community operator who was working on the integration of smart technologies to support more independent living and social connectivity, really getting to grips with the problems that that technology has and the practicalities of what it means to introduce that into a community of older people. So my next idea is about open data for research. Now this is a tricky one to land, as I think the real innovation is going to come up with a partnership where the commercial entity doesn't take all the benefits of getting access to data that has been generated through public resources and through patients. So both Canada and the UK have integrated care systems. So actually we have a common interest in this sort of thing, linking health records, expanding, for instance, biobank resources, and long-term investments in longitudinal studies creates an amazing data lake that will deliver real-world evidence for research and offer opportunities to address some of the key issues with aging, such as the effectiveness of therapies on populations with multiple conditions, where polypharmacy is a well-documented issue and randomized controlled trials typically exclude those people. I should, I suppose, highlight the work in Manchester and elsewhere in the north of England. Manchester, a city region with nearly 3 million people, is making great strides in integrating health and social care information and developing the related access for research and some of the sort of commercial wraparounds with it. So there is benefit flowing back into the UK and the National Health Service. And they are beginning to attract an increasing number of biotech startups into that region. So it's a really good example of that working. My fourth one is innovation funding with strings. And this I mean making the sort of grant funding that we provide to companies conditional on having a team with the relevant academic expertise as part of their project. Now, we operate a grant funding scheme called Collaborative R&D, which does just that, and has been very successful in getting businesses of all sizes better connected with leading edge science and improving the translation. And then finally, an idea around preferential funding and subsidies to overcome reimbursement barriers. So can we get ahead of reimbursement barriers by providing preferential funding to accelerate the adoption of innovative technologies? So the NHS has introduced something called the Innovation Technology Payment, which subsidizes early adoption of proven, cost-effective and market-ready innovations, which are demonstrating potential to deliver significant patient outcomes and savings. And that scheme's been going for a couple of years now and is showing some really early promise. It's not exclusive to a National Health Service. I saw something similar in the US, where I was working with a major hospital system where they saw benefits in getting ahead of the sort of Obamacare reforms by funding the delivery of innovative services to their self-insured retired populations. So there are innovative ways of trying to get that preferential funding going. So those are my five, Roseanne.
Thank you, George. Big five. Last but surely not least, Ryan Darcy, 5 big ideas, 5 minutes.
Sure. I've got 5 ideas. They're big to me, maybe, and hopefully they'll be big to others. I'm not sure. But I come from the perspective of being in the trenches of having built health technology clusters that continue. Also having built a company that has yet to be knocked out of the market and has products and services on market helping people, all the while living in the world of being a full professor in the universities. So I think that with those trenches and with that humility in mind, I went through and created what I think are 5 ideas that would have been helpful for me to have more advice on as I was going through my trenches. The first is power of purpose. So I think what's most important is to know what your purpose is. If you know what your purpose is of your innovation, rather than worrying so much about all the details, it brings and unites researchers with entrepreneurs and companies. And when you get into turbulent times, you can always re-anchor to that North Star of what your purpose is. For us, it's always been about getting the ability to take brain imaging out of the lab and get it an access for cognitive impairment and healthy aging. And that's what's interesting, because what happens next is idea number 2, which is often in the world we focus on products, but it's really people over products. So the world loves to think about the latest advances of Tesla, but they also know that guys like Elon Musk actually have created more than just cars and have sent rocket ships to space and are doing things like Neuralink. So I think it's always really important to concentrate on your innovators. It's your innovators that create innovations, and it's too easy to focus on the innovation as a concrete, tangible outcome of that. And really, if you want to invest in the people who are really pushing the limits and try and help them do more, help them find others who can do more like that. My third is profit is not a dirty word. Profit, profit, profit. I'll say it again.
Okay,
There are
capital letters.
Lots of dirty words. I won't say any on the internet today, but profit is not one of them. Profit in a company equals success, and it fuels growth. And in academics and in academia and in our social system, we all too often feel that it's something that we should be excluding from, instead of actually embracing the idea that a successful company will generate lots of academic successes as well. So we have to learn to square that out. My fourth is the perils of publications and peer review. Right now, we try to create money to stimulate innovation, and we put it into the same measurement system that scientists evaluate, and they measure using publications, the number of publications, the impact of publications. If you measure using publications, you will not find innovative creations. You have to switch your measurement system to looking at the key performance indicators for innovation. So those would be products and services that are successfully in market. And if we could make that one simple switch, it would be huge. My final big idea is we need to promote flying squirrels. So what do I mean by that?
Okay.
When I was young, my favorite animal to watch was the flying squirrel, because the flying squirrel takes a big leap and jumps and does not know where it's going to land. Innovation is risky business, and failure actually equals success. If you miss one branch, you find another before you fall flat on the forest floor. All too often, I think our default mode is to slip into being a little bit cynical and a little negative and hoping for the other guy's or other girl's failure. Ultimately, we have to realize everyone can stand at the top of an innovation mountain in success, and failure is actually success, and taking a risk is a good thing, not a bad thing.
All right. Thank you so much. I love it. 15 ideas in 15 minutes. For those of our audience, if you look at the group chat, all 15 have been put there, but I'm going to ask the CABHI team to advance the next slide where it should list all 15 ideas. There we go. So for the next 8 to 10 minutes, we'd like to open questions up to the audience so that whether you agree with these big ideas, challenge our panelists on their big ideas, offer their own big ideas. I don't know, Mel, if you're there, if you're curating the questions. But I can kick us off with my first.
I'm here. I will curate questions as they come in on the chat box.
Okay.
So if anybody has any out there in the virtual world, please feel free to type them right into the chat box. And I think we have one coming in now.
Well, can I get my first one in and start?
You go for your first three.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm just going to ask Zayna about, and kind of George, about the participatory research question. You've mentioned the idea of getting people very much involved and using virtual trials and these registries. I guess my question is, how do we address individuals who are maybe not connected by the internet, maybe lower SES and can't engage in some of this, have the time or the resources, financial or otherwise, to participate in this? So what are some tactics that we can make sure that those individuals are engaged in participatory research?
Maybe I'll go first. Look, today there is no other channel. There's no alternative. If you can't, pull the little paper off the elevator bank to join a study when you happen to be at the hospital, you're not participating in the analog channel, let alone, So to me, this is about having multiple paths and channels to get to people and their families. In an experience that they're used to already communicating in. And so some people use digital tools a lot, some people don't. So it's not an either or, it's just having, reaching people where they're at and where their values are. And I think that with inclusive design now of any experience, you can actually overcome a lot of what we call those digital determinants of access, or commercial determinants of access, because these cost, time, space, and digital literacy become less of a barrier.
George, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see them as principally digital first, particularly for older populations. So patient groups have an awful lot to do here. So do primary care physicians, we call them GPs, in terms of engaging with people who have conditions or need. Well, one of the things about joint dementia research is it actually surfaced a lot of family and friends who, a bit like the stories we heard this morning, were worried about dementia, weren't showing symptoms, but were thinking, would that be me? Is it part of my family? And motivated to volunteer like that. And I'll give you one final thing. I was in the centre of Oxford at the weekend, and in the centre of Oxford is Oxford Market. And in Oxford Market, there's a stall for the National Institute for Health Research, which is actively reaching out to people in those sorts of settings. So one small example, but I think we have to think about being really inclusive with older people.
So Mel, I'm going to turn it over to you to offer the virtual questions while also putting a plug in for a CABHI store in the middle of downtown Toronto.
Thank you very much, Roseanne, and thanks to the rest of the panel. Which one do I pull out first? Here's a good one, and I'm going to maybe direct this one at Ryan first because he was talking about that nasty word, profit, profit, profit. The question is, how can we balance the importance of profit with the need for social good? Ryan, over to you.
That's a great question. I think that what we have to look at is that our corporations are really working more on social responsible and social enterprise roles. And I think we have the ability to encourage that more from either our public sector or other sectors, our private sectors. At the end of the day, corporations that are not in it for profit, but are in it for helping people, it's a general understanding they will do better anyway. And I think that when those corporations start to solve our biggest challenges and they're profitable doing so, that gives them more motivation to continue to provide social contributions and social benefits. And to stick with my Tesla example, certainly a social benefit is to disrupt the environment in terms of breaking off our fossil fuels. And so I'm rooting for Tesla on that one for sure.
I hope you bought some of their stock a while ago when it went up to $960 a share. When I was at SOCAP this year, Social Capital Markets Conference in San Fran, they used the term purpose and profit. It doesn't have to be purpose before profit. The two can go hand in hand. And I think that sort of aligns with the way you were talking about it, Ryan. Thank you.
That's exactly it, yeah.
Next question. What makes a researchpreneur? How do we cultivate them? Zayna, can I direct that one at you first?
Need to unmute Zayna.
Let me unmute you. There you go.
Oh, you both done it.
Okay, there we go. I never even came up with the word researchpreneur, but I love it. I'm going to use it because there's every other preneur out there, elderpreneur, seniorpreneur, fempreneur, nursepreneur, docpreneur. I think actually a lot of these ideas are really manifesting of a researchpreneur, right? Like all of us who are entrepreneurs, and to me, all an entrepreneur is the person who does innovation. We're busting status quo. We're driven by mission. I think, as Ryan said, all of us got into healthcare or aging because we actually want to make the world better. And if the stuff we're doing, the infrastructure we've inherited for doing that for research or clinical is not the maximal way to impact, we're going to find a different way. And I just think researchers' time has come. I reflect on when I left academia, right? I did 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears of being a hardcore scientist. It was not giving me any vision of how I'm going to affect patients, and I had to get out. I wish I knew some of this then, because I probably would have changed the paradigm.
Fantastic. George.
Could I just come in on the back of what Zayna was saying? So
I wanted to actually ask you the same question.
Oh, right. I think your comment, Zayna, was really insightful, because the research that we're most interested in funding is social and behavioral research and design research to help the technology and the medical science people really understand what people want rather than what people need, and how they engage and would use innovations as they come in. So I don't see any shortage of entrepreneurial thinking in our sort of young scientists. In fact, I'm amazed by how much is coming out of the universities and what it's like now. But I think we need to be able to guide them and coach them much better in terms of how to bring their innovations into market. And it's not just about the technology problems.
Fantastic. Thank you, George.
So Mel, I'm just going to wonder if we have 3 minutes left. That means a minute per panelist for their takeaways. If we can advance the slide, please. Yes. So I asked each of our panelists to put at least two takeaways for our audience. One selfless, so the broader good, and one selfish, that might have a little personal promotion involved. So Zayna, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. So Selfish, which I was supposed to be there live signing, is our new book, The Future of Aging. And I think Carol will post it now. So we spent a year of research on this. It's now in the market. We'd love to come do events, do workshops, and share the insights. It's much bigger than healthcare. And then the selfless would be, our friends at Deloitte have done a broader type of a report on this market. So have a look at both.
George MacGinnis.
So my selfish one is this document, Health of a Nation, which has just been published by a parliamentary group in the UK. It was looking at what it takes to live 5 extra years of healthy living. It goes on to say it's not only possible, but it's affordable. But to get there, we need to stop being timid or ideological in the approach. So semi-selfish, I should say. The second book actually comes from one of the UK's leading public health docs, who's now officially retired, and excuse my Anglo-Saxon, but his book is called Sod 70. It reminds me, it's a guide to living well for older people, but it really reminds me that some of the things that we think of doing for older people may actually serve to disable them in the long term. And he advocates, for instance, using stairs wherever possible, walking to shops, looking after your brain, all things that we need to think about in terms of the innovations we're funding. Are we doing things with people or for them on an assumption of need, not want?
And last but surely not least, Ryan Darcy, your offering is right up at the bottom of the slide.
For sure. I don't have any selfish ones because I'm in the pitch contest, so I'll talk about my pitch then. But I have two selfless ones. The first is really about the authenticity of the situation. I've often said everyone loves innovation as long as nothing changes. So I think we have to be authentic to the fact that if you're falling in love with the concept of innovation, you have to be prepared to move from dating and put a ring on it and marry innovation and commit to it. And that means you're going to change whatever it is you're doing because it has to change. That's the definition of innovation. And the second one ties on to that. It's uncomfortable. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Everyone can find a unique role in innovation. You don't all have to, not all of us have to be out on the edge and the scary beyond. There's somewhere between the middle and the edge of innovation that you can help propel that along and make sure you impact the world and make it a better place. But you still have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
So I'd like, with that, I'd like to thank our panel, Zayna, Ryan, and George from Toronto, Vancouver, and the UK respectively. I hope our audience will take our 15 big ideas and be a flying squirrel, jump off the branch, and join us on the researchpreneur side of the edge. Mel, back to you and the CABHI team.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. That was a great panel. Really appreciate it. And if everybody wants, they can see in the chat box that Carol has posted the link to Zayna's book that she spoke about from SE Health called The Future of Aging. There's a link to that. And Carol has also posted the Deloitte Future of Aging report. So the links are there. Please have a look at those after this conference. Thanks, guys.
The Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation is powered by Baycrest. To listen in and get involved, go to cabhi.com. The podcast technicians behind the scenes are Podtex. Share your What's Next Canada podcast ideas with us at www.podtex.com. TECHS, Podtex.